Welcome back to another journey into the past. Tonight, we're travelling to the Channel Islands in the year 1623, where the hunt for witches has reached a fever pitch. Take a moment to like this video and subscribe if you haven't already, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Before we begin, make yourself comfortable. Dim the lights if you can, maybe turn on a fan for that gentle background sound, and let yourself settle in. We're about to step into a time when knowledge itself could be deadly, when healing herbs could become evidence of devil worship, and when a woman's wisdom might cost her everything. You wake in darkness, cold stone beneath your palms, the taste of blood still sharp on your tongue. In 3 days, you will either burn at the stake or walk free, if the judges believe your herbs heal rather than curse. Let your shoulders drop now, breathe slowly, and step back into a time when the line between salvation and damnation was thinner than parchment. Close your eyes and become Elizabeth Fauvel, accused witch of Guernsey. The cold creeps through your bones like morning frost, settling deep into your joints where the shackles have rubbed your ankles raw. Your fingers trace the rough stone walls of your cell beneath the royal courthouse, each crack and crevice now as familiar as the lines on your palm. 3 days you have waited here in the darkness beneath St. Peter Port, listening to the distant sound of waves against the harbour walls above, knowing that today brings either freedom or the flames. The straw beneath you rustles as you shift, and you feel the small, crawling movements of the lice that have made their home in the bedding. Your cellmates breathe heavily in the pre-dawn darkness. Marie Torode lies curled against the far wall, her spirit broken after 2 sessions with the magistrate's questions. She confessed yesterday to flying to the devil's Sabbath, though you know she has never travelled further than the parish boundary in her life. Jean Le Vescomte whispers prayers in her sleep, her lips moving soundlessly as she begs forgiveness for sins she never committed. Through the barred window, barely wider than your hand, you can see the first pale light touching the harbour. Ships avoid docking here during witch trials, their captains unwilling to risk the supernatural contamination that the townspeople believe clings to the very air. The merchants complain about lost trade, but they whisper it quietly, afraid their words might be taken as sympathy for the accused. Your thoughts drift to the morning 3 days ago when you woke in your own bed, in your own cottage, with herbs hanging from the rafters and the familiar weight of your grandmother's mortar and pestle beside the hearth. That morning, you had planned to gather feverfew from the cliff paths, to dry it for the headaches that plague Goodwife Durand each month. You never imagined that by evening you would be dragged from your home in chains, accused of consorting with devils and cursing innocent children. Let your breathing slow now, like the gentle rhythm of waves against stone. Feel your muscles relax as we journey deeper into this story of survival. The iron around your ankles is worn through your woolen stockings, leaving tender, weeping sores that stick to the fabric. Every movement sends a sharp reminder of your captivity through your legs, but it is nothing compared to the ache in your heart when you remember the faces of your neighbours as they watched you being taken away. Some crossed themselves and turned their backs. Others stared with hungry curiosity, already composing the stories they would tell their children about the witch who lived among them. You close your eyes and remember the examination that followed your arrest, how they stripped away your clothes and your dignity with equal indifference. Goodwife Torode, the magistrate's wife, led the search with 2 other women from the parish, their fingers tracing every inch of your skin, looking for the devil's marks that would prove your guilt. They found what they sought in the strawberry-shaped birthmark on your shoulder blade, the one your mother had kissed when you were small, telling you it looked like a blessing from the fairies. The pricking came next, long pins thrust into every mole and freckle, searching for spots that would not bleed or cause you pain. When the scar tissue from an old burn failed to respond as they expected, they nodded to each other with grim satisfaction. You tried to explain that injured skin often loses feeling, that this was simply the body's way of protecting itself, but your knowledge of anatomy only made them more suspicious. Why would an innocent woman know such things about the workings of flesh and blood? Goodwife Torode surprised you with her gentleness, her touch careful as she performed the humiliating examination. You remembered delivering her first child 5 winters ago, how she had gripped your hands and begged you not to let her die. The baby had been breech, and without your intervention, both mother and child would have perished. Now she avoided your eyes as she documented each supposed mark of Satan, her pen scratching across parchment as she sealed your fate with ink. The irony cut deeper than any blade. These women who searched you for devil's marks had all sought your help at one time or another. They had come to your door in the dark hours before dawn, desperate for remedies their husbands must never know they needed. Herbs to ease the pain of monthly courses, tinctures to prevent unwanted pregnancies, salves for bruises that appeared after market day disagreements. You had helped them all, asking no questions, keeping their secrets as sacred as any priest's confessional. Now they repaid your discretion with betrayal, their whispered confessions to magistrates replacing their whispered pleas at your threshold. The very knowledge that had made you valuable to them in darkness now made you dangerous to them in daylight. A woman who knew too much about the workings of the body, who could predict the weather by watching birds and clouds, who understood which herbs could heal and which could harm, was a woman who clearly had supernatural aid. The sound of footsteps echoes down the stone corridor outside your cell, and you recognize the heavy tread of Constable Fauconnier making his morning rounds. In a few hours, he will come for you again, to drag you up those narrow stairs into the courtroom where your fate will be decided. But for now, in these quiet moments before dawn, you allow yourself to remember what your life was before it became evidence in a trial for your soul. Your cottage sat at the edge of the parish, where the cultivated fields gave way to wild moorland. It had belonged to your grandmother and her grandmother before her, each generation of women adding to the knowledge stored within its walls. The herbs that hung from every rafter told the story of centuries of healing chamomile for nightmares and restless sleep. St. John's wort for the melancholy that struck in winter's depths. Willow bark for the aching joints of fishermen who spent their days hauling nets in cold water. Let your jaw soften now. Release any tension you're holding in your temples. Feel the weight of history settling around you like an old, familiar blanket. The garden behind your cottage was your true sanctuary, where you had learned to read the language of leaves and roots. Your grandmother had taught you that plants were willing teachers for those patient enough to listen. She showed you how to harvest bark at the new moon for the strongest medicine, how to gather morning dew from lady's mantle for treating wounds that refused to heal, how to dry flowers in the exact pattern that preserved both their potency and their beauty. Every morning you would walk the garden paths in bare feet, feeling the earth's pulse through your soles, checking each plant for signs of disease or distress. The neighbours sometimes glimpsed you at this ritual and whispered among themselves about your strange communion with green, growing things. They never understood that you were simply observing, learning to recognise the subtle changes that preceded a plant's flowering, or the first signs of blight that could destroy a crop. The mortar and pestle that sat beside your hearth was worn smooth by generations of use, its marble surface stained by countless preparations. Your grandmother's hands had shaped themselves to its curves, as had your mother's, as had yours. In the early morning hours, when the rest of the village slept, you would grind roots and seeds by candlelight, the steady rhythm of your work becoming a meditation that connected you to all the women who had performed this same task before you. Hidden beneath loose floorboards were the books that your grandmother had taught you to read in secret. Literacy was suspicious enough in a woman, but books about medicine and anatomy were dangerous beyond measure. The Latin texts smuggled from French monasteries, the careful drawings of human organs, the detailed descriptions of surgical procedures, these were treasures more valuable than gold and far more perilous to possess. But knowledge was meant to be used, and you could not stand idle when suffering could be relieved. When young mothers came to your door in tears, their babies burning with fever, you did not turn them away. When fishermen arrived with hooks embedded in their flesh, you did not refuse to help. When the magistrate's own daughter writhed in childbed fever, you did not let politics prevent you from saving her life. Each success, you now realize, just became a thread in the rope that would eventually hang you. The village began to whisper that your remedies worked too well to be natural. How could a simple woman know exactly which herbs would cure lung fever when the physician from St. Peterport had given up hope? How could you predict which women would have difficult births and which would deliver easily? How could you look at a rash and know immediately whether it was harmless or the first sign of plague? Your refusal to accept payment for your services only made matters worse. The physician charged good silver for his bloodletting and purging, while you asked only that people gather their own herbs when they were able. This generosity, meant to help those who could least afford medicine, was twisted into evidence of supernatural motivation. Only someone in league with the devil, they reasoned, as who would work without expecting earthly reward. The animals that frequented your garden became familiar spirits in the telling of your neighbours. The old tomcat who slept in your herb patch was transformed into a demon that carried messages to Satan. The ravens that roosted in your apple tree became harbingers of doom that you consulted for prophecy. The fact that you could approach wounded wild creatures and tend their injuries was proof of your unnatural power over the animal kingdom. Feel your eyelids growing heavy now, Like curtains drawing closed against the harsh light of judgment, let yourself sink deeper into this story of a woman caught between worlds. The accusations against you multiplied like seeds scattered on fertile ground. Goodman Le Prevost's daughter had been dying of lung fever until you arrived with horehound and coltsfoot, herbs that cleared her breathing within days. Now he testified that you had made an unnatural bargain to preserve his child, asking what price the devil would demand in return. Goodwife Durand, whose monthly headaches you had treated with feverfew for 3 years, now claimed you had cursed her womb to prevent conception. Though she had 4 healthy children and had never expressed desire for more, most damning was the testimony of young Peter Geely, who swore he had seen you speaking with your cat in what sounded like a foreign tongue. You remembered the morning he described, how you had found the creature with its paw caught in a trap, how you had murmured soothingly in the old French your grandmother had taught you while you freed the injured limb. To Peter's ears, your gentle words of comfort became demonic incantations. Your compassion transformed into sorcery. The weather itself became evidence against you. You had learned to read the signs that preceded storms the way cattle gathered in the shelter of hedges, how certain flowers closed their petals before rain, the restless behaviour of seabirds flying inland. When you warned fishermen to stay ashore before a sudden squall, they credited your foresight to supernatural knowledge. When you advised farmers to harvest early before an unexpected frost, your accurate predictions were remembered as proof of your ability to control the elements. Your knowledge of human nature was equally suspect. Years of tending the sick had taught you to recognise the signs of certain ailments before they became obvious to others. You could see pneumonia developing in a slight shortness of breath, recognise the early stages of childbed fever in a new mother's flushed cheeks, predict which wounds would heal cleanly and which would fester. This expertise, earned through careful observation and bitter experience, was reinterpreted as the devil's gift of prophecy. The persecution that now surrounded you had deeper roots than superstition alone. The established physicians in St. Peter Port had long resented your success with patients they had failed to cure. Your remedies cost nothing but time and knowledge, while their treatments required expensive imported medicines and instruments. When you saved lives they had written off as hopeless. You made their training seem inadequate, their methods primitive. The religious tensions that gripped the Channel Islands provided another motive for your persecution. The authorities sought scapegoats for the social upheaval that accompanied the Protestant reforms. A wise woman who operated outside the control of either church or state represented a dangerous independence that threatened the new order. By destroying you, they could demonstrate their power while satisfying the common people's hunger for simple explanations for complex problems. But there were still those who knew the truth of your nature, who had experienced firsthand the gentle touch of your healing. They worked in shadows now, too afraid to speak openly in your defence, but unwilling to abandon you entirely. Constable Fauconnier's wife slipped an extra portion of bread into your daily meal, though she dared not acknowledge you when she brought it. The guard who emptied your chamber pot sometimes left a clean rag for washing. His small kindness offered without words or acknowledgement. Letters reached you through hidden channels, brief messages from those whose lives you had saved or whose children you had delivered safely into the world. They could not testify on your behalf without risking their own safety, but they wanted you to know that not everyone believed the lies spoken in the courtroom above. Some even spoke of plans to help you escape if conviction seemed certain, though you feared such attempts would only bring doom upon your supporters. The sound of the harbour bell tolls 6 times, and you know your day of judgment draws near. Soon the constables will come for you, dragging you from this damp cell into the light of a courtroom packed with curious spectators and hostile witnesses. The magistrates will read the charges against you one by one. 27 counts of witchcraft ranging from cursing cattle to flying through the night to attend the devil's Sabbath. Let your breath flow out slowly now, releasing the tension from your chest. Feel your heartbeat steadying as we approach the moment of truth. The courtroom fills quickly with townspeople eager to witness the spectacle of your trial. Some come from morbid curiosity, others from a genuine belief that they are seeing justice served against the forces of evil. The magistrates take their places behind the high bench, their robes black as ravens' wings, their faces stern with righteous purpose. The great Bible lies open before them, its pages yellow with age and handling, a silent witness to the proceedings that will determine your fate. You're led to the accused stool, a deliberately uncomfortable seat that forces you to maintain an awkward posture throughout the proceedings. The shackles around your ankles clank against the wooden legs as you settle yourself, and the sound echoes through the sudden silence of the courtroom like a death knell. Every eye is upon you now, some filled with fear, others with hatred, a few with what might be sympathy if you dared to hope. The charges are read with ceremonial gravity, each accusation met with nods and murmurs from the assembled crowd. You're accused of flying through the night on a broom made of birch twigs, though the twisted branch they present as evidence is clearly a hedgerow, cutting you used for sweeping. You're charged with transforming into a hare to spy on your neighbours, though several witnesses admit they only glimpsed the creature at dusk when shadows make identification uncertain. Most seriously, you're accused of attending the witch's sabbath at Blokulla, where you supposedly danced naked with demons and signed your name in the devil's book with blood drawn from your own finger. Marita Rode, her spirit broken by days of interrogation, confirms this fantasy with tears streaming down her cheeks, describing impossible journeys to a mystical island where witches gather to worship their dark master. The witnesses against you parade through the courtroom like actors in a terrible play, each adding their own embellishments to the growing catalogue of your supposed crimes. Goodman Fauconnier swears he saw you flying past his window on a winter night, though you know you were home with fever, tended by your own daughter. Goodwife Le Marchand claims you cursed her butter churn so it would not make cream, though her own negligence in cleaning the equipment provides a more mundane explanation for her difficulties. Young Peter Gearler repeats his story of hearing you speak to your cat in devil's tongue, and the magistrates nod gravely as if they have never heard a woman comfort an injured animal. The constables produce the poor creature as evidence, holding the terrified Tom aloft while it yowls in distress. They claim its yellow eyes prove its demonic nature, ignoring the fact that half the cats in the parish have similar colouring. Your attempts to defend yourself are met with scepticism bordering on hostility. When you explain the natural properties of the herbs found in your cottage, the magistrates exchange meaningful glances, as if your knowledge itself proves your guilt. When you describe the traditional remedies passed down through generations of women, they interrupt to ask where such wisdom could have originated if not from supernatural sources. The prosecution presents vials of your medicines as if they were bottles of poison, though many in the courtroom have benefited from those same preparations. The willow bark that eased Goodman Rode's joint pain becomes a cursed powder for causing paralysis. The chamomile that helped Goodwife Durand's baby sleep becomes a potion for inducing the death-like trance of the bewitched. But then something unexpected happens that changes the entire course of the proceedings. A commotion erupts in the back of the courtroom as Magistrate Hellier's young daughter collapses in convulsions, her body rigid with fever, foam flecking her lips as her eyes roll back in her head. The physician in attendance can only shake his head helplessly, muttering about evil humours and the need for bloodletting that might kill the child in her weakened state. In desperation, Magistrate Hellier turns to you with anguish written across his features. He knows your reputation as a healer, knows that you have saved other children from similar fates. The courtroom falls silent as he struggles with his decision, torn between his duty as a judge and his love as a father. Finally, his paternal instincts overcome his judicial obligations, and he orders your chains removed so you might examine his daughter. Under heavy guard, you approach the convulsing child with gentle hands and experienced eyes. You recognize the symptoms immediately: brain fever brought on by infection in the ears, a condition you have seen many times before. Without your herbs, your options are limited, but you know that cooling the fever is essential if she is to survive. You call for cold water and clean cloths, ignoring the suspicious mutters from the crowd as you begin to tend the magistrate's daughter, with the same care you would show any suffering child. For the next hour, the trial is forgotten as you work to save a young life. You bathe the girl's burning skin with cool water, support her head as convulsions rack her small body, whisper words of comfort in her ear though she seems beyond hearing. Gradually, impossibly, the fever begins to break, and her breathing steadies into the peaceful rhythm of natural sleep. The courtroom erupts in confusion as the implications of what they have witnessed sink into the collective consciousness of the spectators. How could a servant of the devil heal the magistrate's daughter? Why would Satan allow his supposed follower to save the child of the man who sits in judgment over her? The theological impossibility of your actions throws the entire proceeding into chaos, forcing even your accusers to confront the contradiction between their charges and the evidence of their own eyes. Feel your pulse slowing now, like the gentle rhythm of healing sleep. Let the weight of injustice lift from your shoulders as truth begins to emerge. The magistrates retire to consider their verdict, their faces troubled by the demonstration they have just witnessed. The courtroom buzzes with whispered conversations as neighbours who had seemed certain of your guilt now question their own testimony. How can they reconcile your gentle healing of an innocent child with the monstrous crimes they have attributed to you during the long hours of deliberation? You sit quietly in your chains, offering silent prayers for the soul of every person in that courtroom. You feel no hatred for those who've accused you, only sadness that fear has twisted their gratitude into suspicion. These are your neighbours, people you have known all your life, whose children you have delivered and whose ailments you have eased. The witch they have created in their minds bears no resemblance to the woman who has lived among them for 43 years. As evening shadows lengthen across the courtroom floor, the magistrates finally return with their decision. The room falls silent as Magistrate Hellier rises to pronounce your fate, his voice heavy with reluctance and his eyes unable to meet yours. Guilty, he declares, on 13 of the 27 charges, the evidence too overwhelming to ignore despite the troubling questions raised by recent events. The crowd's reaction is mixed some cheer with bloodthirsty satisfaction. Others shift uncomfortably in their seats, troubled by doubts they cannot quite voice. The sentence, when it comes, strikes like thunder in the hushed courtroom, death by burning, to be carried out at dawn in 3 days' time. You close your eyes and feel the weight of those words settle over you like a burial shroud. Though some small part of your spirit refuses to surrender hope entirely, but fate, it seems, has one more surprise in store. Even as the magistrates disperse and the crowd files out into the evening air, events are already in motion that will change everything. An anonymous letter arrives at the courthouse that very night, containing evidence that several of the witnesses against you perjured themselves under pressure from overzealous constables. The mysterious correspondent provides details that could only come from someone present during the interrogations, someone who watched justice corrupted by zealotry and could no longer remain silent. The letter reveals that Marie Tarode was promised lenient treatment for her own family if she confirmed the Sabbath testimony, and that young Peter Geely was coached in his story by adults who suggested what he might have seen and heard. Most damning, it exposes the methods used to extract confessions from your cellmates. The physical and psychological torture that broke their spirits and forced them to speak lies they knew would condemn innocent women. As word of these revelations spreads through the island, pressure builds on the authorities to reconsider your case. Merchant families who have benefited from your healing quietly remind the magistrates of your value to the community. While rumours circulate that your execution might bring divine retribution upon the island, the cure of Magistrate Hellier's daughter has shaken even the most convinced believers in your guilt, forcing them to confront the possibility that they have mistaken wisdom for witchcraft. On the morning you are scheduled to burn, a herald arrives instead with news of your reprieve. Your sentence has been commuted to banishment. Your life spared, but your home lost forever. All your property is forfeit to the crown. Your name struck from the parish records as if you had never existed. You are forbidden to return to the Channel Islands on pain of immediate execution, cast out like a leper from the only world you have ever known. The ship that carries you away from Guernsey sails with the dawn tide. Its captain paid well to ask no questions about his passenger's identity or destination. You stand at the stern watching your homeland disappear into the morning mist, clutching a small leather pouch that contains the only treasures you have been permitted to keep a handful of herb seeds carefully saved from your confiscated garden. Your new identity comes with papers bearing an unfamiliar name and a fabricated history, the careful work of sympathizers who dare not reveal themselves, but refuse to let injustice claim another victim. The ship carries you to a small coastal village in Normandy, where other refugees from religious persecution have found sanctuary in anonymity and hard work. The cottage you eventually acquire sits on a hillside overlooking the sea, its walls thick and its windows small, built to withstand winter storms and summer heat alike. Behind it, you clear a patch of ground for a new garden, planting your precious seeds with hands that remember the rhythm of cultivation even after months of enforced idleness. Slowly, carefully, you begin to rebuild the life that was torn away from you, one plant at a time. The villagers are suspicious at first, as country people always are of strangers who arrive without family or obvious means of support. But when the blacksmith's wife goes into difficult labour and the local midwife despairs of saving mother or child, they reluctantly seek your help. Your successful delivery of a healthy son, accomplished without instruments or bleeding, gradually opens doors that fear had closed. Years pass, and your new garden flourishes under careful tending. The herbs grow strong and fragrant in the Norman soil, their healing properties unchanged by the journey across water and the trauma of transplantation. Young women begin to seek you out for the same reasons their mothers once came to your door in Guernsey monthly pains. Difficult pregnancies, wounds that refuse to heal, the countless small sufferings that flesh is heir to. You teach them as your grandmother once taught you, passing on the knowledge that persecution tried to destroy, the wisdom of plants, the signs of weather and season, the deep understanding of how bodies heal and spirits mend. All of it flows from your scarred hands into their eager minds like water, finding its natural channel. The chain of knowledge remains unbroken despite the efforts of those who would sever it forever. Letters reach you occasionally through secret channels. News from the islands you can never again call home. Your daughter Mary is married well and speaks your name only in whispers, though she grows the herbs you taught her to tend in a hidden corner of her garden. Your son Jean has become a master blacksmith and quietly treats the burns and cuts of his trade with remedies he learned at your knee, though he tells no one where such knowledge originated. Thomas, your husband, died 2 winters after your banishment, and you grieve that you could not be there to ease his passing with the herbs that might have given him peaceful sleep. But you comfort yourself with the knowledge that he understood why you could never return, why the risk to those who loved you was too great to chance. His love sustained you through the darkest hours of your exile, and his memory continues to warm you in the cold nights of your new life. The skills that once made you dangerous in the eyes of ignorance now make you valuable to a community that judges by results rather than superstition. Your success in treating ailments that baffle the local physician gradually builds a reputation that reaches beyond the village boundaries. People travel from neighbouring towns to seek your help, bringing coins and goods in payment for services you once provided freely. As your hair grows white and your hands develop the tremor of age, you begin to worry about what will happen to your knowledge when you're gone. The young women who come to learn from you are eager but inexperienced, and you know that the subtle arts of healing require years to master fully. You begin to write again, setting down in careful Latin the remedies and techniques that your grandmother passed to you by word of mouth alone. The manuscript grows slowly, each page a repository of knowledge that might otherwise vanish with your death. You include not just the recipes for medicines and the methods of preparation, but the deeper wisdom that transforms mere herb gathering into true healing, how to read the signs that indicate which remedy will work for which patient, how to adjust treatments for differences in age and constitution, how to recognize when medicine has done all it can and nature must take its course. On quiet evenings, when the day's patients have been tended and your garden watered, you sit by your window looking out over the sea toward the islands that cast you out. You feel no bitterness toward those who drove you away, understanding now that they acted from fear rather than malice. The witch trials were symptoms of a deeper sickness in society, the panic that seizes communities when old certainties crumble and new ways of thinking challenge traditional authority. Your story is not unique, across Europe. Other women with knowledge deemed dangerous have faced similar fates, some escaping as you did, others less fortunate. The skills that once made you valuable to your community became threats to established power structures, and the price of that threat was exile or death. But knowledge has its own life, its own will to survive, and like the seeds you carried from your old garden to your new one, it finds ways to take root in unexpected places. Feel the peace of understanding settling over you now, like evening mist rising from still water. Let the weight of history lift from your shoulders as you accept the truth of survival. In your 70s now, you have outlived most of your accusers and survived to see attitudes toward healing begin to shift once more. The physicians who once viewed you as competition now quietly seek your advice on difficult cases, having learned that pride is a poor substitute for effectiveness. The authorities who drove you out have been replaced by younger men who care more about results than ideology, who judge healers by their success rather than their gender or methods. Letters from your homeland bring news that the witch trials have finally ended. Their fever burned out like the plague epidemics that once terrorized the islands. The men who condemned you are mostly dead or forgotten, their zealotry replaced by a more pragmatic approach to justice and medicine. Your cottage still stands empty. They say its garden overgrown with weeds, but no one dares to claim it for fear of some lingering curse. The irony brings a sad smile to your weathered face. In life, you are accused of cursing your enemies, though you never harboured such thoughts. In death, you have supposedly cursed your own property, though your spirit holds nothing but forgiveness for those who wronged you. Perhaps there is justice in the fact that the home you were forced to abandon remains untouched, a monument to the price of ignorance disguised as righteousness. Your manuscript is complete now, hundreds of pages of carefully recorded knowledge waiting for the right hands to receive it. You have made arrangements for its safekeeping, ensuring that it will find its way to those who can use it wisely when your time comes to join your ancestors. The chain of healing will continue unbroken, carried forward by new voices but rooted in the ancient wisdom that no persecution can truly destroy. On your final day, you sit in your garden surrounded by the herbs you have tended for so many years. Their familiar scents carrying memories of all the lives you have touched and saved. The morning glory climbs the cottage walls in purple profusion, and bees hum drowsily among the lavender stalks. Your hands, so often accused of working evil magic, rest peacefully in your lap, stained green with the honest work of grinding healing herbs. A young woman kneels beside you, one of the apprentices who will carry your knowledge into the future. She holds your manuscript reverently, understanding the precious nature of what she's inherited. In her eyes, you see the same hunger for learning that once drove you to memorize every detail of your grandmother's teachings, the same compassion that will make her seek out suffering wherever it hides. As the sun sets over the Norman coast, painting the sea in shades of gold and crimson, you close your eyes for the last time, secure in the knowledge that your life's work will continue long after your body returns to the earth. The herbs will keep growing, the knowledge will keep flowing, and somewhere a young woman will place gentle hands on fevered skin and whisper the same words of comfort your grandmother taught you so many years ago. Your story ends not with the flames that were meant to consume you, but with the quiet satisfaction of a life lived in service to healing, a tradition preserved against all odds, and a legacy that will outlive the fears of those who sought to destroy it. In gardens yet to be planted, in medicines yet to be mixed, in lives yet to be saved, the witch trial survivor lives on, her wisdom as eternal as the turning of the seasons and as gentle as morning dew on healing leaves. Close your eyes now and rest in the knowledge that wisdom endures long after those who would suppress it have crumbled to dust. The seeds of knowledge, like all seeds, find ways to survive the harshest winters and bloom again when spring returns. Sleep well, knowing that truth has a patience that outlasts persecution, and healing hands will always find those who need their touch. Sleep peacefully now,